John chapter 1. But since we're starting in John, obviously we need to go over to Genesis, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was on the surface of the deep, and God's Spirit was hovering over the surface of the waters. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And he divided the light and the darkness. Right? And then in chapter 2, we have Yahweh God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Okay, so we're just going to keep those in mind as we go back over here. Sorry, I want to close these real quick. Sorry, there's just so much going on with this one. I just want to, so many passages. Okay, so just thinking back to what we've just read, all right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Okay, so we have lots of stuff. We have this same imagery of light and darkness. We also have word, which is interesting, because if we come over here to Psalm 33, we have, by Yahweh's word the heavens were made, all their army by the breath of his mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays the deeps in storehouses. Okay, so here we have this imagery of by the word of the Lord, right? So John is pulling together this imagery of word and also light and darkness and life and all of that kind of stuff that's going on with this. But what's also fascinating about this is that John is using the word here, logos, which meant something also to his Greek hearers. So it means something to his Jewish hearers as being Torah and wisdom and this thing that was there creating with God right at the beginning and all of that stuff. But then you also have to your Greek hearers this idea of this life force, this understanding, this thing that's going on. And so he's actually using a single word to pull together both Greek and Jewish hearers so that people are like, okay, I know what's going on with this, okay? And he's pulling that together, but he's going to use this and kind of flip everything on them in just a minute, okay? But then he also has this thing of the darkness has not overcome it or understood it or, different things like that. And really that word seems to be about like getting your arms around it or being able to like get it. Like you have it, you hold it, you take control of it, which is why it has both overcome and understood as like definitions, because it's kind of like having it, and the darkness doesn't have this. Okay, and there came a man sent from God. Okay, I just want to make sure. Sent from God, whose name was John. The same came as a witness, and that he might testify about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he was sent that he might testify about the light. The true light that enlightens everyone was coming into the world. Okay, and then if you go over here to Isaiah 49. Listen, islands, to me. Listen, you peoples from afar. Yahweh has called me from the womb, from the inside of my mother. He has mentioned my name. He has made my mouth like a sharp sword, which means that you have authority. It goes into Revelation, all that stuff there too. Okay, he who has hidden me in the shadow of his hand. He has made me a polished shaft, or an arrow, right? He has kept me close in his quiver. He said to me, "You are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified." But I said, "I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength in vain for nothing. Yet surely the justice due to me is with Yahweh, and my reward with my God." Now Yahweh, who had formed me from the womb to be his servant, says to bring Jacob again to him, and to gather Israel to him. For I am honorable in Yahweh's eyes, and my God has become my strength. Indeed, he says, "It is too slight a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the nations, that you may be my salvation to the ends of the earth." So we have this idea here of everyone, right? So John is pulling in this idea of, everyone. Even as far back as Isaiah, we've got this idea of the whole world is coming in. It's too small a thing just to bring back the people of Israel who've been scattered to the world, to the winds, and to the far sides of the world, and lost entirely, is too small to just bring them back. We're bringing everybody in. Okay? So John is a witness to this. All right. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world didn't recognize him. Okay, I just want to keep track of things. Okay. He came to his own, and those who were his own didn't receive him. All right? So we have, okay, he came into the world, and they didn't get it, right? Jews would be like, yeah, that makes sense. The Messiah's coming, they're not going to get it. Oh, but we're not going to get it either? But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become God's children, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor the will of flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. Okay, and this, okay, we've gone from creation, and now it's going to take us back to this idea where in Genesis 11, we learn that Sarai was barren. She had no child. And then in 12, all right, wrong one. And then in Genesis 12, then we say, Yahweh says to Abram, leave your country and your relatives and your father's house and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who treats you with contempt. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. And so we have this idea that we've got the creation of the land of Israel, or the tribe of Israel, right? Where the rest of the world has been disowned by God. He says, I'm not keeping you. Instead, I'm going to create my own nation. And how am I going to create my own nation? I'm going to start with 2 old people who can't have children. And that's how I'm going to start my people. My people begin with a miraculous creation, which is, again, this idea of life and all that stuff, right? And so we have people who are not born of blood or the flesh or the will of man, but it's God who creates this, right? So we have this idea coming in to this particular passage as well. So now John has taken us from creation and all of that stuff and set up this idea now of how we're going to have the nation of Israel as well, okay? The Word became flesh and lived among us. We saw his glory, such glory as the one and only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. And here, the Jewish hearers and readers would be like, okay, yeah, the Word was there for creation. Wait, the Word became flesh? Now you've lost me. Okay, this idea is crazy. Like, the Word comes and becomes a person? What are you even talking about here? But John then pulls in this idea of seeing the glory, okay? And so, here we are in Exodus 40, all right? Starting in verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and Yahweh's glory filled the tabernacle. Moses wasn't able to enter into the tent of meeting because the cloud stayed on it, and Yahweh's glory filled the tabernacle. When the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward throughout all their journeys. But if the cloud wasn't taken up, then they didn't travel until the day it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahweh was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. Okay, and so we have this now within all of this, right? Okay, I love this. Okay, the Word became flesh and lived among us, literally tabernacled, made his dwelling, hung out with us here. Right? And so now John is taking us to the next part of Israel's history. They've been created, but now they're being taken out of slavery. All right, and here the glory of God falls and comes over the tabernacle where they are, and then also stays with them, journeys with them. So as you're reading this part in John, this is bringing you back to Israel's history as well. All right, but now instead of just like God just showing up as a cloud, now he's there, okay, in the flesh. All right, and we saw his glory, the glory of the Father. Okay. Okay. John testified about him. He cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes before me has surpassed me, for he was before me." All right? And this is the idea, right, that the older you are, the more respect you get in these ancient cultures. We don't have that so much today, but, back then, the older you are, the more wisdom you've accumulated and whatever. And John's like, yeah, this guy was before me. Like he's been here from before the beginning, right? Like he's around. Okay, this guy. Okay. All right. From his fullness, we all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. And we have this idea, right, that the law is like not full of grace and stuff. But if this, again, is going to be taking us back to the Old Testament, now we are in Exodus 34, okay? And this is where Moses is like, hey, I want to see your glory and all that stuff. And Yahweh's like, no, you can't, but I will go in front of you and proclaim my name, but I'm going to like, keep you covered up so you can't see me. All right, you can't do that. Okay, so then Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, a merciful and gracious God. There's that grace thing. Slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness and truth, keeping loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and disobedience and sin, and who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and on the children's children, on the third and fourth and on the fourth generation. Okay, and there's stuff we could talk about with third and fourth generation and how that's like kind of a lifespan, but then we're back to grace and grace, okay? Because what we have is, we have grace. All right, we have grace, but now we have grace upon grace. All right, because Jesus Christ brings more than what we have there. Okay. No one has seen God at any time. The one and only Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, has declared him. Okay, and your translation might have more or less. It doesn't really matter too much whether your translation, like which way you go with it, because we've already established that this word is God. Okay, we've already established all that. So whether your verse explicitly spells out like, and he is God again, or just like he is in close relationship, he's the one who can let us know what's going on. Okay, and what I think is so fascinating about this, all right, is this idea of, the idea that no one has seen God at any time, right? So now let's go back to Exodus 33, okay? And God says, right, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And this is, again, we know that John is thinking about this because this is all related to the passages. We just had the thing where he's like, I'm going to cover up your thing and I'm going to pass before you and declare my name and how I'm gracious, okay? But this is before that, all right? And he says, you cannot see my face and live. What's so fascinating about this is that just a few verses before this passage, here in verse 11, Yahweh spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. In the same chapter, just a few verses apart, okay? Here we are in 20, here we are in 11, okay? It's Yahweh speaking face to face like a friend, and then he also says, hey, by the way, you can't see my face, or you're not going to be able to live. So what's going on with this? Okay, and there is a lot of options with this. There's a lot of stuff. Personally, my favorite to go with right now is something from Dr. Michael Heiser, not surprising because I've been listening to him a lot, is this idea of two powers in heaven, where Jews, prior to Christ, believed that there were two powers. You had the invisible God with his full glory that man could not handle. And then you had visible God showing up as like the angel of the Lord or as the angel of the Lord's hosts or other people showing up here and there, right? Where it's like, wow, I've seen God's face and I live, right? Like you have that even with Hagar and all that, right? So you have this visible God, but you also have the invisible, and you can't handle the invisible, but you can handle the visible, all right? And now John's like, yeah, that's Jesus. Jesus is now that one who can then come and show us who God that we can't see is all about, right? I just think that's wonderful. Okay, all right, okay, all right, cool. All right. This is John's testimony when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, who are you? He declared, and did not deny, but he declared, I am not the Christ. Then they asked him, what then? Are you Elijah? He said, I am not. Are you the prophet? He answered, no. Okay, so he's not the Christ. He's not the Messiah. He's not the one who's coming. And they're like, okay, then are you Elijah? But Elijah's been dead. Okay, so where's this Elijah thing coming from? Okay, so here we go. Malachi 4, starting in verse 4. Remember the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded to him in Horeb for all Israel, even statutes and ordinances. Okay, which we know now, this is also connected because this is happening where we have the law given and all that stuff and where Moses sees God and all of this. This is all tracking. John is taking all of this history and mushing it together for you with this, okay? So now people are coming and they're saying, hey, are you Elijah? Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. So they have been waiting for Elijah to come, this new Elijah. Are you this new Elijah? No. Okay, are you the prophet? All right? Deuteronomy chapter 18. Yahweh your God will raise up for you, to you, a prophet from among you, or your brothers, like me. You shall listen to him. This is according to all that you desired of Yahweh your God in Horeb in the day of the assembly. Same event, okay? Saying, let me not hear again Yahweh my God's voice, neither let me see his great fire any more, that I not die. Yahweh said to me, they have well said that which they have spoken. I will raise up them a prophet from among their brothers like you. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I shall command him. So, are you that prophet guy, right? Are you that one? He answered, no. They said therefore to him, who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? And he said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as Isaiah the prophet had said. Okay, and you can go look at Isaiah 43. And as we talked about when we did Matthew, it's actually interesting because where it says, it's actually, the punctuation's a little bit different. It says, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. Either way, it's still preparing the way of the Lord, but it's just interesting that the punctuation changed between those two. I just think that that's fascinating. So it's either whether you're out in the wilderness, which is where he is, right? Which is why he moves the punctuation, because he's the one crying in the wilderness, okay? Whereas it says, hey, out, say, in the wilderness, make straight the paths, okay? Well, he's out in the wilderness, making straight the paths, so it doesn't really matter too much. I just think that that's super fascinating with all of that. Okay, all right. The ones who had been sent were from the Pharisees. Okay, and the Pharisees, by this point in time, were actually more powerful. By the time that John is writing, which is post the destruction of Israel, were actually more powerful. It's unlikely, a lot of things I saw say, that it was actually the Pharisees. So this is John updating the text. Is this a problem? Not for his hearers. Today we might be like, what? Was the Pharisees? Most likely. What are we even talking about? Okay, so, because we got Levites in the country. Okay, all these people. Okay, but now, okay, we've got even whoever the enemies are right now, whoever the people that are opposing, they're coming. Okay. They asked him, why then do you baptize if you are not the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet? Okay, what are you doing out here then? Okay, if you're just one crying in the wilderness, hey, make straight the paths, what are you doing? Okay. John answered them, I baptize in water, but among you stands one whom you don't know. He is the one who comes after me, who is preferred before me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loosen. These were the things done in Bethany, beyond the Jordan, where John was baptizing. Okay, so he's like, hey, what? I'm not worthy to even untie his strap of his sandal. That's who's coming next. Okay, not me, the next one. All right, and so you have foot washers who are the lowest slaves. Okay, who would wash your feet when you came in after being dusty, rocking around in your sandals and whatever all day. And John's saying, I'm not even worthy to be the person who unties the sandal to get ready for the foot washer. Like if you want to talk about how important I am compared to him, I'm nobody compared to this guy who's coming. You have no idea who he is. Okay, that's just great. But then there's this weird verse, right? These things were done in Bethany, beyond the Jordan, where John was baptizing. What is that? Okay, and I should have drawn you a map. I didn't, so I'm gonna have to picture it. Okay, so we've got the Sea of Galilee. Got the little, Jordan River, okay, coming down to the Dead Sea, okay, and then you've got, let's see, on your side, okay, so then, so then you've got over here, you've got Bethany beyond the Jordan, and then you've got Jericho on this side, and then Jerusalem and Bethany and all that stuff on this side, okay, so there's 2 Bethanys, okay, but you've got this thing, okay, straight across from Jericho, okay, and it says that John's baptizing them at Bethany beyond the Jordan, okay, so what is this? In Joshua, chapter 3. When the people moved from their tents to pass over the Jordan, the priests who bore the ark of the covenant being before the people, and when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, and their feet and the feet of the priests who bore the ark had dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks all the time of harvest. The waters which came down from above stood, and the rose up in one heap a great way off, at Adam. That's kind of fun, isn't it? Okay, going back to Genesis. Okay, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those who went down toward the sea of the Arabah, even the salt sea, were wholly cut off. Then the people passed over near Jericho. The priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, and all Israel crossed over on dry ground until the nation had passed completely over the Jordan. So all of the people, in a way, are baptized, not actually going, they're passing through the waters, but they're not actually getting wet, but they're passing through the waters of the Jordan. And John is baptizing. These things are happening right at the traditional space of where people crossed over. The writer of John here is telling us, okay, we've already gone through creation. We've already gone through the Exodus. We've already gone through God showing up. We've already gone through how God reveals himself and talks to us when we do this kind of stuff. We've already gone through the creation of the nation. We've done all that. And now we're talking about entering the promised land. John is taking us through the history of Israel, and he did it through this one random verse that reading it, it's like, why is this here? Why is this here? It's to tell us that this is part of the baptism, again, of the nation. Are you going to be part of it? Are you coming into the new promised land? Oh, so good. All right. The next day, he saw Jesus coming to him and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is he of whom I said, after me comes a man who is preferred before me, for he was before me. I didn't know him, but for this reason I came baptizing in the water, that he would be revealed to Israel." All right, so he says, "Behold, the Lamb of God." Okay, and there's two things with this. If we go to Leviticus 16, we've got this thing about the atoning sacrifices, and when this is the priest, has finished atoning for the holy priest, the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall present the live goat. This is the one that's alive. This is the one that you kill. Okay, Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions, even all of their sins. And he shall put them on the head of the goat, and shall send him away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is ready. The goat shall carry all the iniquities on himself to the solitary land, and he shall release the goat in the wilderness. So this goat isn't even killed. There's a different goat that's killed. The goat that takes the sin isn't even killed, okay? But by the time that we get now in history, because this is all the way back in Leviticus, we now see it as, okay, it's all, they're kind of lumped together, the Passover lamb and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we also have here in Isaiah 53, verse 7, and this chapter is pregnant with stuff. There's so much stuff going on, and there's some weird stuff going on, which I would love to cover at some point in time. This is not the time, because we're talking about John, not Isaiah, but there's some great stuff in this chapter that if you read it, you're going to be like, hang on a second, I got some questions. Okay. He was oppressed, and yet he was afflicted, and he didn't open his mouth. As a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and as a sheep that is before its shearers is silent, he didn't open his mouth. He was taken away by oppression and judgment. Okay, and of his generation, who can say, blah, 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 coming on down. And he suffered in his soul, and he will see the light and be satisfied. All right. My righteous servant will justify many by the knowledge of himself, and he will bear their iniquities. Okay, so there's probably some of the things that are coming in with John talking about this. There's some strange things going on, but it's this idea of the lamb that takes away the sin. You've got the one that gets sent out of the wilderness, but you also have this slaughtering and taking on the iniquities and infirmaries, okay? And so we've got both of these things that are going on with that, okay? That's just kind of interesting. All right, okay. John testified, verse 32. I have seen the Spirit descending like a dove out of heaven, and it remained on him. I didn't recognize him, but he who sent me to baptize in water said to me, on whomever you will see the Spirit descending and remain on him is he who baptizes in the Holy Spirit. Okay, and so this is where John's like, look, I'm just baptizing with water. There's somebody else coming. Okay? I have seen and have testified that this is the Son of God. Your translation might have the chosen one. Okay, Son of God, chosen one. Okay, Isaiah 42. Behold, my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my Spirit on him. He will bring justice to the nations. There it is, that whole thing. He will not shout, nor raise his voice, nor cause it to be heard in the street. He won't break a bruised reed. He won't quench a dimly burning wick. He will faithfully bring justice. He will not fail or be discouraged until he has set justice on the earth, and the islands wait for his law. Okay? And so we have this promise of this new one, okay? And we've set all this up. All right, so what we have covered today is just a portion of the first part of the first chapter of John. And John has already taken us through the entire history of Israel. We have gone from creation through the creation of a nation with people who can't have children. So the children they're going to have are children of God, just like this new group that we're going to have a creation of. Okay, so we have new creation. We have a new formation of a new nation that is created by God. Okay, we have the same thing of God showing up and being there, being part of this whole thing and showing his glory and talking face to face and all that, be showing the glory that we can't even see. Okay, and then we have beyond that, we've got wandering around in the wilderness. We've got then entering into the promised land, going through the baptism of the Jordan, going into that land and seeing all that stuff, while also getting this callback to all of the Levitical things and the way of ridding your sin and all of that stuff. All of that tied up in this little introduction so far. Super cool. At least I thought so. I hope you did as well.